Hey guys, it's G. Today we're talking about how to varnish your painting with a brush. This is a highly requested guide from the members of Acrylic Pouring for Beginners, and I've only briefly talked about varnishing before. I've showed you my method for pouring it out of a cup, and I've showed you how to use a spray varnish. Today we're going to talk about the most efficient way to varnish, which is using a brush. And as part of this tutorial, I'm also going to explain what varnish can do and what varnish can't do, because there are some misconceptions here. And we'll also talk about how to clean silicone or oil additives off your painting before you varnish, and I'll show you why you need to do that. So first, let's talk about what varnish can do. Varnish can protect your painting from the elements. Varnish can bring colors back to life because acrylic paints sort of fade as they dry. And varnish can give you a choice of sheen or finish if your paints are not all the same sheen that you want in the finished product. What that means is you can choose a finish that is matte, satin, gloss, semi-gloss, whatever your preference is. You can choose that at the varnishing stage regardless of what the paints were. Now here's the thing about what varnish can't do, because this is where the misconception comes. Varnish doesn't cast, meaning you cannot build varnish up in thick layers vertically. Unlike resin, or epoxy as some people might know it, varnish evaporates, the water content in varnish evaporates, and it loses volume dramatically as that happens. So what you'll see in your painting is if there's cracks, if there's solids, and basically your painting isn't perfectly flat, varnish is not going to fix that. It's just going to add a protective layer over that. Now you might be confused because when you see the very shiny thick layer, that's usually resin, and resin can, depending on the imperfection, can hide it in the 1/8 inch that it casts in. But if all you're really interested in is that very, very shiny, bright look at the end, any gloss varnish of any kind will give you that. You should also know that if your varnish comes out of a can, tub, bottle, whatever it may be, if it's yellow, that's meant for wood, you should not be using that on a painting. Now let's talk about cleaning silicone off a painting. The thing with silicone oil is, first of all, it's an oil, so it doesn't mix properly with water. It doesn't integrate into the water mix, and it doesn't fully dry. Meaning, at the end of when the painting is dry and cured, you'll have a thin, glossy-looking film. Sometimes it looks like streaks, sometimes it looks like dots and cells. I'll show you in a close-up now in one of the paintings that I haven't cleaned yet, and I'll show you how I clean it with just kitchen degreaser, something you probably already have under the sink. This is a painting I did with silicone oil. You may remember this from my 3 easy techniques for beginners video. What I want you to pay attention to is the ridges you're seeing here. And if I bring this a little bit closer and refocus, I don't know if you can see the glossy film where the cells are. Like over each cell, you'll find a round circular shape in the same shape of a cell. Maybe you can catch it right here, right here. See? This is the silicone oil that hasn't dried. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna clean this up with a little bit of kitchen degreaser. So here's what I'm using. This is just kitchen degreaser, the kind you probably have under the sink. A better idea. I'm just gonna let this sit for a minute. Again, wipe the degreaser off. And I forgot to mention this while I was recording, but you will also want to wipe off whatever was left of the kitchen degreaser with water. This step is really important because the kitchen degreaser itself is problematic, but the kitchen degreaser can be wiped off with water. Now we'll look at how to varnish with a water-based varnish. I will show you the Liquitex varnish, how you would use that, and I'll also show you the clear solvent-based varnish. That's the kind of varnish that you could use on oil paintings or acrylic paintings. Now, The main reason you might be having problems in brush strokes is you're using the wrong kind of brush. The wrong kind of brush is a synthetic firm brush. These are very, like, if you were to flick it, this is the kind you use for a flick. It bounces back, you see? This kind will scrape your varnish. I'd avoid these. What you want to use is this one is kind of wet, but you should be able to see. This is a natural bristle brush. When you flick it, it doesn't really bounce back, and this will reduce brush strokes. Okay, so we're gonna varnish this painting with a mixture that is 3 parts varnish and 1 part water. You want the varnish to still have some pull, not be completely runny. You want it thicker than water. And what we're gonna do is we're just gonna pour quite a bit right down the middle, and then use our brush from the center and go to the corners. If you spot hairs in there, try to get them out before the varnish starts to get sticky. Okay, go to the other corner, okay, and continue spreading these out. Try to go from where it's pooling to where it's not. So you see how when there's enough fluid on there, you don't get any brush strokes. And here is the dry result. Hold it up against the light. Notice how the texture you're seeing is pretty much the texture that was there before. All the varnish is really doing, especially the gloss varnish kind, which really, like, it's very shiny under the light. All it's really doing is making every existing imperfection bounce the light off better, so you just see imperfections better. Varnish doesn't hide the texture of canvas. Varnish doesn't hide the imperfections. If the paint wasn't thick enough to flatten out the texture of the canvas, varnish is not the part that's going to help you. So it's important to know what it can and can't do for you. Now that I've set that one aside, I'm going to show you the solvent. You may remember this from the flick. The video about the flick. Let me just find the solvent-based varnish. So solvent-based varnishes, they look like this. They're clear. You can use them. They usually specify that you can use them on acrylic or oil. They're quite runny. And I've saved it to the end because if we use the oil or solvent version first, we wouldn't be able to use the same brush for the water-based. And here we go. I'm just gonna straight out thing. Usually you'd go in the center, but because this is a CD, it's gonna be a little bit harder. So I'm just gonna spread it out. Maybe this will be enough. We'll see. Steady. That's really your cue. If you notice the liquid is starting to harden and it's not hiding the brush strokes, that's how you know you need more varnish. Now I've gotten it on my hands. You normally don't want it on your hands. And there we go. Now I'm gonna wait a little bit for all of these to dry, and I'll show you the dried results of them all. Also, remember, if you use a solvent, if you use any oil-based materials, you need to very quickly wash your brushes with turpentine, or dish soap is the next best thing. Now, do you see how these colors came back to life? Yeah, this is why varnishing is awesome. So here's our solvent-based varnish. What I want to draw your attention to is what you might start seeing is the texture of a cell activator, for example, because that does, either depending on
your consistencies, it might look like ridges or it might look like crevices. In either case, what's actually happening here is because you've got a gloss finish on it, light bounces off these crevices or these ridges much better than it does if the finish is matte, which most acrylic paints are, and as a result, they're just highlighted. But if you look closely, there are definitely no brush marks. Any texture is from, said, like you can see a hair right there, a few solids that were in the paint. See, any texture that's there was already there. Nothing happened from the brush.
And that was my guide on how to varnish your painting. I hope you found this guide useful. If you're looking to learn acrylic pouring, I would start here with this video on what supplies you need to buy. Then go into this video, which will show you how to mix your paint. This video will show you 3 easy techniques to start with. And then this video will give you all the terminology that you might not know or any acronyms that you encounter in acrylic pouring. Thanks for watching. This is G, and I'll see you in the next video.